NASCAR has changed the testing schedule for the next-gen cars. Ware Racing is expected to be a two-car operation in the Cup Series in 2022, and Chase Elliott is going to be competing in Nitro Rallycross here in a couple weeks. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start off with Garrett Smithley, as Garrett Smithley this weekend is going to be driving a Pro Late model this weekend for the Thanksgiving Classic at Southern National Park. I know a lot of people give Garrett Smithley a lot of criticism in regards to how good of a driver he is in NASCAR, as he hasn't really had the greatest statistics in his career, but I think he has a lot of really good stats in his late model career, and I think he honestly is going to do a very solid and a very good job, and I'm really excited to see what he can do this weekend. I think he's going to have a good shot at contending overall for the victory if he's able to make it to the finals. If he's able to do that, I think he has a very strong shot of making it and having a good run at it. But I'm really excited to see this. I hope he does very well, and I'm really happy to see that he will be competing in another late model race here coming up really soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Focus Factor. As Focus Factor is going to sponsor Erik Jones for 26 races in 2022. This is really huge for Erik Jones, because Erik Jones, for the last couple years especially, has struggled with funding. And Richard Petty Motorsports really struggled with funding. There was a lot of races this year, especially I think there were like 10 races where they went unsponsored, and they had like Petty's Garage and stuff on their car. But they now, with them having a full-on sponsor for Focus Factor for 26 races, I think is really huge. Now, there are a lot of questions in regards to Focus Factor coming on, because it's a really unknown company, and a lot of people feel like that they are a little bit of a shame and a scam, similar to the DC Solar situation. But I really do not know if this is going to be the case. We can't really judge it until basically things do pan. Hopefully the checks do clear, but this is really huge, because now Erik Jones and Rich Petty Motorsports, with the money that they're going to get from the sponsorship, if it ends up being good, what is going to end up happening now is they're going to be able to put all that funding into building much better cars and much more competitive cars, which I think that's a good thing, because Richard Petty Motorsports last year, especially in the year, they really started showing signs of slight improvement. Erik Jones got 3 top 10s in the final 10 races, and I believe that with the sponsorship coming in for Erik Jones, I really do think he has a really good shot of contending a lot more than he already has. So hopefully this money coming in helps to be more competitive, and great to see that they have sponsorship for next year in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Rich Bickle. As Rich Bickle is going to be retiring from running after racing after 45 years at the conclusion of next week's Snowball Derby. He has 2 more races that he's going to run. He'll be running the Bill Bagley Senior Memorial, and then he will run the Snowball Derby next week. Rich Bickle is a driver that's raced in motorsports for a very long time, 45 years. So he's currently 6 years old at the moment. He started racing at the age of 15, and like I said, he's been racing for a very long time. He's contended for wins in all 3 respective series and has had pretty good stats. I think he has maybe 1 or 2 truck series wins in his career, and has had a pretty solid career throughout his NASCAR career, and a driver that's been legendary in the side of late models. So I'm really happy to see that he's going out on a really good terms, and this is it for Rich Bickle. I know that guy's had controversies with certain people in the past, but Rich Bickle is a guy who's had a pretty legendary career in the late models, has run over 100 late model races in his career, and I think he's going out on his own terms, which is a really good positive to see. So this is the final race. The next week will be the final race for Rich Bickle, and wishing him the best luck, and hopefully he's able to contend in his late model events. And now we're going to jump ahead and jump onto the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about North Wilkesboro, as SMI is already starting to work on North Wilkesboro. As you can see from images that surfaced from Save the Speedway, the Tyson suites that were in there from the time they had the last race in 1996 are starting to go away, and the track is beginning to be repaired and repaved, which is really crazy, considering the fact that literally just a week ago, they literally got the $18 million funding, actually the $19 million, plus potentially the $5 million grant that they might be getting here really soon. I think in North Wilkesboro is going to happen very soon. It's great to see that they already started working on the track. They've been doing like some work on it, but they're getting rid of some of those Tyson suites. They got the big holes, and what they have to do to the track right now is they have to do a lot to make sure the track is ready to go when we do get to see racing once again. So I think it's really awesome that they are working on it, because I think that the sooner we can get a track like North Wilkesboro back on the schedule, I think the better it's going to be for everyone. I think everyone overall will be much more happy than they currently are about it. So I think it's really awesome that they're starting to work on it, and great to see that there's, again, I'm really happy to see that they are starting to work on it. So I think it's great to see, especially for, like, racing and stuff for North Wilkesboro, because I think that, here's the thing. I think that most likely we won't see racing in North Wilkesboro to probably around 2024, 2025. We may early see it in 2023, maybe the S-X, maybe other series join in long term. Who really knows? But I think it's really awesome that they're starting to work on it. I like to see track get repaved and all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done to it, but this is really, really good news, and I'm happy about this overall for sure. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Speedway Motorsports Incorporated and Dover Motorsports Incorporated. Basically, Bob Proctor's reporting this, and he's told us that there were new documents filed with Securities and Exchange Commission describing negotiations of Speedway Motorsports' purchasing of Dover Motorsports. Negotiations began in July. Smith family had to increase its offer to outbid another potential buyer. Now, this is definitely really, really interesting. What other buyer do I think was going to come in and buy Dover Motorsports Incorporated? I believe that ISC, International Speedway Corporation, was probably going to be the ones that were trying to get it. NASCAR's been trying to buy up as many things as possible. They're trying to get as much equity, considering that NASCAR, I think, wants full control of the schedule. But SMI, I think, wants to have control of Dover so they can have a different group. Because look at SMI's statistical tracks. SMI has a lot of mile and a half. Now, of course, they do have a few different tracks like Bristol at the moment, and they also have Sonoma, but mainly they have mile and a half. And SMI wanted to buy up those tracks because they wanted to have diversity on a schedule. National Super Speedway is a 1.33 mile track that races somewhat like a short track, but also has really long straightaways. So it's kind of like a Darlington in essence, where it's kind of like that and also similar like Dover as well. And of course, Dover, which is a 1 mile track. So they were trying to buy that up. And of course, they are talking about getting National Fairgrounds, and they're also looking at trying to bring North Wilkesboro back currently at the moment. I think it's very interesting. I think it was ISC. There could have been other potential buyers that were getting involved in it, but I have a really, really big suspicion in theory that I think that they were trying to get in there and buy it up. So very interesting for sure, and that's what's going on with SMI and ISC, or SMI and Dover Motorsports Corporate. I think it's definitely really, really interesting, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Worldwide Technology Raceway. As Worldwide Technology Raceway is expected to put in $40 million renovations after the first Cup Series race on June 5th in 2022. What they're expected to do is update the infield and hospitality updates, and they're expected to also update the electric grid as well, and these are expected to be done by 2025. For those of you who know, this is really, really exciting, and what Curtis Francois and Chris Blair Jr. have done at that track have been extremely incredible, and now they're doing more renovations, and a lot of it, of course, is help from funding from Worldwide Technology, who has backed that track since around 2017 or 2018, which I think this is really, really exciting for sure, and I really do think it's awesome to see that a racetrack is coming in and really, really wanting to put in the work and trying to get the track ready to go and back up and running. And I think that there are things that do need to be done. If we know that there's been some issues with the electric grid. Remember during the Truck Series race this past year, basically the trace unfortunately had a power problem, and a lot of people are kind of concerned about the electric grid and problems right there. But I am overall really, really happy that these renovations are coming in. I have not been myself to Worldwide Technology Racing. I'm going to my first Cup Series race in 2021. But the things that they are doing, especially bringing race day back in some aspects with John Roberts and Kenny Wallace being there. Worldwide Technology Raceway, they are doing the way that they do promote their events with Jonathan Bomarito. What they do is huge. And again, there are so much people already that are wanting to go to this race. I expect that the crowd will be sold out for the first event. And that track, I think, holds like 75,000 fans. So that track is going to have a ton of people that are going out to that. I am going to be there next year at this current moment. So I'm really excited about that. But I think it is really awesome that they're putting work into the track. I think this is really, really exciting. Really, really cool. I'm happy about this. And I'm glad to see that there is work going into Worldwide Technology Race, because the better they can get that track, and if they make it good, that's going to be awesome for everybody. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Tab Boyd. As Tab Boyd is not going to be spotting for William Byron next year, and instead, he is going to be spotting for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 2022, and we're replacing Frank Diney Jr. as his spotter. Tab Boyd is spotted for a illustrious number of drivers. He spotted for Juan Montoya, has spotted for, Juan Montoya, he's spotted for William Byron, and also spotted for Joey Logano as well. So he'll be joining Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I think that Tab Boyd is a really, really good spotter and a person that can go out there and coach. He's been doing this, he's been in the game for a very, very long time, and he knows what he's doing. Now, my question is, what spotter could William Byron get next year? Because with Tab Boyd leaving to go to Ricky Stenhouse Jr., so I think, like I said, JT Doherty Racing is really trying to prove themselves that, hey, we're no joke anymore. We're trying to go out there and prove that, hey, we can get someone good like him. I think that this is a great pickup for them. My other question is, what happens with William Byron's spotter? Maybe Frank Diney Jr. is going to go up with William Byron next year. Maybe there's going to be a swap where you see Frank Diney Jr. become the spotter for William Byron. But honestly, I really do not know who's going to be the spotter for William Byron next year. There are some other spotters that are potentially available. We know that Brett Griffin, he's going to be going back full-time with College next year. We also know that we're going to see Freddie Kraft work with Bubba Wallace next year and TJ Maters work there. So we know some people are moving in different places. But Tab Boy leaving William Byron is definitely interesting because I think that he was a really, really good spotter. Who knows? Maybe Earl Barwin comes out of retirement from NASCAR after working IndyCar. Maybe comes over to work with William Byron. That's probably not going to happen, though. But I think it's really, really interesting as a whole that Tab Boy is going to be moving over to work with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I think especially on super speedways, Tab Boy knows what he's doing. He got Joey Logano a lot of wins and actually got William Byron his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory at Daytona. So we know that Stenhouse is probably going to be better for sure at super speedway tracks next year, but I think this is really, really exciting, and I'm glad to see that Tab Boy will be making his return to work with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Spa-Francorchamps. Now, NASCAR put out a thing about Suzuka. Remember, 25 years ago, there was a race that happened around Thanksgiving time at Suzuka, and they asked what international track would they like to see. And I believe it was Josh Bilicki who said Spa-Francorchamps. And they basically, Spa-Francorchamps' Twitter group basically has said, we have a group, basically have some places for Jenna Fryer, Bob Pockers, Jeff Gluck, and we have desks for them ready to go. And they said that they are interested in maybe hosting a NASCAR Next Gen race. I think this would be really, really cool. We know that NASCAR said that they want to go international, and we know the Spa-Francorchamps, they've had issues with their track. They have some things that need to be fixed, corkscrews and all those areas of the track that definitely need to be fixed. But Spa-Francorchamps is a track that is really, really solid as a whole that can produce some really, really good racing, especially with the road course racing that's going to be coming with the next-gen car in the 2022 season. I think that if it goes very, very well next year, I do believe that we may eventually see NASCAR go international. I think, of course, if they were to go international first, they'd most likely go with the tracks in North America. Tracks like in Mexico City, the Autodromo Hernando Rodriguez track that they used to go to. Track like Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and up in Canadian Tire, or whatever the track is called, the track they have. I think it'd be really, really awesome to see them go to Spa-Francorchamps. So if they go over to Europe, I know that the European Series and NASCAR Euro Series, they do run there currently at the moment. I don't think, not the track, but they do run in Europe. Maybe they could bring them over there. But I think it'd be really awesome to have a track like Spa-Francorchamps on the NASCAR schedule. I think it'd be really, really cool. And honestly, I really want to see it. I think it'd be really, really awesome as a whole if you could get a track like Spa-Francorchamps in the schedule, and maybe that will happen here really, really soon. I think it would be really, really cool. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are going to talk about Rick Ware Racing. The first story from Rick Ware Racing we're going to talk about is Rick Ware's plans for Xfinity and his plans also for IndyCar. He says his plans to run at least one full-time car in 2022 and may run a second car on a full-time basis as well in 2022. Rick Ware Racing will continue their partnership with Dale Coyne Racing in IndyCar in 2022 as part of a multi-year deal. Let's first start off with the IndyCar side of things with Rick Ware Racing, because I want to talk about a little bit more about this. Now, this could be where Cody Ware goes. However, I think that this is going to be where Takuma Sato goes for there. They have a partnership this year, and Romain Grosjean drove the 51, which is a Ware and Dale Coyne partnership. They had a partnership. They actually started in 2020 in the Indy 500 when they had James Davison run the car. They only ran 5 laps. Then they expanded their partnership with Dale Coyne Racing, where they ran the 51 car and 52. And like I said, got Cody Ware to make select starts, and also Pietro Fittipaldi made select starts for them in that 52 car as well. Now, I could, like I said, see Cody Ware definitely coming over to run that. However, I think at the they're only going to have 2 full-time cars next year, and I think that the 18 is going to be driven by Dave Malukas, who finished runner-up in the Indy Lights Championship, and then the other car is going to be driven by Takuma Sato, since Takuma Sato is not going to be going back to Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing, as they've announced their lineup, and it really would be a bad decision, in my opinion, to have Takuma Sato basically sitting on the sidelines, and Honda really wants him to be racing in some sort of series in open wheel right now. So I think that it's going to be Takuma Sato going to that right. Now, maybe at some point they may and let him have another engine. The issue is that I think they're only allowing 18 engines next year, and they basically sold out on their engines. So that I don't know what's going to happen there. But at the same time, that's what I expect from the IndyCar program. Now onto the Xfinity Series program, the potentially 2 cars. I do think Rick Ware Racing could go on their own ways and run their own team. However, I do think that they're going to continue their partnership with SS Greenlight Racing going into 2022. I think that one car will be a full-time car, perhaps maybe like a Ryanair or Matty D ends up getting into that ride in Xfinity Series. And in the second car, maybe just a car where they have a mixture of drivers from their Cup programs, guys like, of course, like Cody Ware, JJ Yealy, Garrett Smithley, could be guys in their partnership, or maybe Joe Graf Jr. perhaps will get an opportunity once again go to SS Greenlight, though we don't really know what's going on with Joe Graf Jr. going into next year. So this is definitely a really interesting story as a whole that Ware Racing is looking at this for the future, and very interesting for sure. And maybe their partner Xfinity Series program will expand. They're at least going to run one full-time car, probably with the SS Greenlight team again, and then they will have a second car next year. This is definitely really interesting and very interesting as a whole for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the second part of what Rick Ware said. Rick Ware Racing says that Andrew Ranger will run some Xfinity Series races for Rick Ware Racing in 2022. Andrew Ranger, of course, has competed in the Penny Series from Rick Ware Racing, and they've actually been very, very competitive. And, of course, they have Dodge backing right now, and they've been very, very competitive. And Andrew Ranger did contend for the championship, and like I said, got them their first win in the Penny Series this year. While their NASCAR presence in the main NASCAR Series, Xfinity Truck and Cup, has not been really, really exciting, wherever the other series they run, whether it's American Le Mans, or whatever Le Mans Series, the Asian Le Mans Series, the IMSA Series, all the other series they do run, they're actually very, very competitive. And the Penny Series is no exception. And Andrew Ranger is a driver that has competed in NASCAR's top 3 divisions in the past. He's competed in truck starts. He competed Canadian Tire. He drove the 53 car, I think, in 2013 or 2014. He competed in 2000. He competed in Xfinity multiple times, contended for top 5s in that respective series. And as a driver that has had pretty good caliber statistics in his career, and I think he'll do very, very well. What tracks will he run? I assume that he will probably run in the road course races in the 2022 season. Probably all 6 or 7 road course races that they're going to run is probably what they're going to put him in the car next year. But maybe they'll give him some oval starts next year, and maybe some other select starts in 2022. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I think that this overall is really, really exciting that we're going to see Andrew Ranger make his returns. I think that he is a driver that absolutely deserves another opportunity in NASCAR's top 3 divisions. He was a very, very solid road course racer, contended for top 25s and top 30s, and also, like I said, got some top 5s in his respective starts. So I really do hope to see him have a really strong run. I think it'd be really, really awesome. And hopefully he will do very, very well in 2022, because I think it'd be really cool to see him contend for victories. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the third quote from Rick Ware Racing. Now, Rick Ware also mentioned that the charter under the Petty Ware banner is currently TBD, as RPM is working on their own plans for the charter. Rick says he has a lot of interest inside and outside the sport in regards to that charter. Here's the thing about the Petty Ware charter. Right now, that Petty Ware charter is a partnership from Rick Ware and Petty, even though that it has both of those names. Currently, Richard Petty really does not have affiliation besides the name. However, it looks like there's a chance that that charter could go back to Richard Petty Motorsports. However, I do believe that Richard Petty Motorsports will still remain a one-car operation, despite them picking up Focus Factor as a sponsorship and a partner for next year. I do not believe that they are going to expand to a 2-car operation next year. I know some people have theorized maybe they would expand to a 2-car operation if they take back this, but I do not believe that that is going to be the case. I think they're going to end up keeping that next year only down to 1 car. And I think they'll probably sell the charter. Rick Ware will probably sell that second charter as well. What teams do I think will end up getting the charters next year? There's 2 charters I think that are going to be sold, because we'll talk about the other Rick Ware Racing story here in just a second. I think the 2 teams that are going to get it, I don't think a team outside of the sport is going to get it. I think the 2 teams that are going to get it are GMS Racing and Spire Motorsports. Now, we know, first of all, about Spire Motorsports. Spire Motorsports, of course, is going to be running a Truck Series team next year, but they want to remain a 2-car operation, and they originally were supposed to get the Starcom charter before that was officially sold to 2311 Racing in a partnership with Spire. I think Spire wants to remain a 2-car operation. They want to field 2 cars in 2022, and I think that the first team that will get that charter is Spire Motorsports. The second team that I think is going to end up getting the charter is GMS Racing. GMS Racing is still currently searching for a charter at the moment, and I think that this is the last hope for them to get a charter, because all the other charters are currently sold or are getting really ready to race right now. And I think that they will be the only other team that does get a charter for 2022. And I think that because, of course, they've been frustrated with the way that the charter system works, but I think that they will end up getting the second charter from the Rick Ware Racing camp in 2022. I don't think, again, they are planning to run full-time regardless if they have a charter or not, but I believe that they will end up getting that second charter next year. I do hope that ends up being the case, as I want to see GMS Racing have an opportunity to be really, really competitive, and hopefully that they don't have any issues getting parts and pieces, because that's one thing thing the uncharted teams are really worried about is that. Other teams that may end up getting it, maybe MBM Motorsports when it comes into money, but I think that GMS Racing will get it over MBM. I think MBM will still be in Cup next year, but I think that'll be the case in regards to that. So that's definitely really, really interesting, and we'll have to wait and see in regards to the Ware Racing situation if they're able to sell those charters to both of them. We know we'll talk about Ware Racing, what their plans are for the Cup program next year in just a little bit, but that is the plans for what's going on in regards to that charter. Now we're going to jump on to first of three major stories of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Chase Elliott. As Chase Elliott is adding more racing to his calendar, as he's going to be competing in Nitro Rallycross in Florida on December 4th and 5th, which is going to be in the next week. Chase Elliott has already competed in a lot of races so far. He's raced a lot of sprint car events, and it's one thing I really like about Chase Elliott is what he's currently doing right now, where he's going to run a couple different events. We've already seen Kyle Busch come over and run the Nitro Rallycross at Phoenix a couple weeks ago, and he actually did very, very well, actually ended up making it to the finals, and actually ended up finishing fourth, and contending against guys like Tanner Froust, Travis Pastrana, and Scott Speed, and those guys. I think those are the top three finishers in the event, but he ended up finishing fourth, which is the best of the rest, which is really, really impressive. And I think that this is really cool to see Chase Elliott is going to be competing in that. I know that they have been trying to recruit guys like Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson. I was wondering, with Kyle Busch competing in this and seeing Kyle Busch really, really excited and having fun with it, I was wondering if we were going to see a guy like Chase Elliott come out and run this event, and I was absolutely correct. We may end up, you never know, we may see going to 2022, we may see more drivers go out there and run different types of events. We may see guys like Kyle Larson come out and run, guys like William Byron. You really never know, but this is one thing I really enjoy about drivers like Kyle Larson, Ryan Preece, and Chase Elliott is not only are they going out there and running like grassroots events, they're going out there continuing racing, and they're keeping themselves currently focused at the moment on what they're trying to do. And I think that Chase Elliott, the goal for him is to just get experience, just in case he eventually wants to make this a full-time career. So I think it'd be really cool to have a guy like Chase Elliott running this full-time, but I don't think he's ever going to do that. I think he's going to continue racing in NASCAR for a very, very long time, but you really never know what the career trajectory for Chase Elliott is going to be. But I think that this is really, really awesome, and I think a lot of people agree with me on this. I think that this is really cool to see that a guy like Chase Elliott is going out and trying not only just running difference, but trying other events at the same time as well, which I think is really, really cool. So I'm really happy to see that Chase Elliott is competing in Nitro Rallycross. I think it's big for the Nitro Rallycross series, and again, I do hope he does very, very well. The goal is to just have as much fun as he can. But if he makes it to the finals like Kyle Busch did and is able to actually contend to get a top 5, and if he's able to finish even on the podium, I think that'll tell people, hey, he's talented. He's done pretty decent in his sprint car races so far, which, again, he's not that amazing. Kyle Larson, every race that he's racing, usually Kyle Larson's racing. Kyle Larson's won, and he's not at points made the finals where Kyle Larson has. But at the same time, Chase Elliott, the more experience he gets in racing, the better I think he's going to be. He's gotten better as a sprint car racer and a midget racer as well. And I think that the more experience he gets in this, the better he's going to be. He's probably already tested these cars already to know what the feel is going to be for them. But at the same time, I do think it's really, really awesome that Chase Elliott is going to be competing in this event. Really, really excited for this, and I'm happy about so well that he'll be competing in this event for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the final report from Ware Racing. Now, Ware finally said that Ware Racing will most likely run 2 full-time cars in 2022 in the Cup Series, along with the new Ford alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing. Now, going into next year, we know that they are having a major alliance with Ford. They'll be getting Roush Yates engines next year, and they will have a major alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing. They've had loose alliances, I think, with teams in the past, like NBM Motorsports, other organizations like SHR, among others. They've had loose ties, but they've only now had a major manufacturer alliance until now, where they will have an alliance with Ford going into next year. Now, what do I expect from Ware Racing in regards to their performances next year? I think Ware Racing is going to be a team that absolutely improves. How much do I expect them to improve? I expect them from going to being like a backmarker team where they basically are just barely making it in the charter system points, where I think they're going to be a team that's similar to JG Doherty Racing. I think they're going to get occasional top 15s, top 20s, and I think they're going to occasionally contend for top 10s at points as well in races in these cars. Maybe they'll surprise me and they'll contend for victories, but I'm not expecting that. I never would expect a team to go from a 35th place team up to a winning contender team. So what I expect is them to go from like a 35th place team probably up to about a 20th to 25th place team, but I expect them to make major improvements because of this major alliance. The second thing we got to talk about is potential drivers that could end up going to the team next year. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think that they're going to have one full-time driver in 2022, and I think that the other car is going to be a partnership car with multiple drivers in that car, similar to what they've done with like their 15 and their 53 car in the past. I think that they will have one partnership car that will mixture a bunch of their drivers in their program, maybe a couple other drivers added on throughout the season. So let's talk about the partnership car, what I expect from the partnership car. Let's talk about that one, again, we're expecting the 50, the 15, and the 51 to be the cars next year. The 51 car, I think, is going to be the factory car. I think that's going to be the main factory car. So the 15 car is going to be the partnership car with all the different drivers. I think it's going to be a mixture of guys from the Ware Racing camp. Guys like Josh Bickle will probably be in that ride. Guys like, perhaps, not Joey Gase, because he's going to be having his own Xfinity Series program, but Garrett Smithley will probably be in that ride at points. Maybe they get Austin Terrio back. Matty D would probably be a consideration for that ride. Ryan Newman. A mixture of those guys could end up going into that ride, and I think it'll make up. The second ride is going to be the full-time car, and I think there are 3 drivers that come to mind for me who I'd like to see get into the full-time ride. Well, I'd like to see Josh Bickle be one of the contenders for that ride as well. I don't think it's going to be him. The first driver I think should be up for consideration is James Davison. I've been wanting to see James Davison have a really good opportunity Cup Series and a really, really good ride, especially on road courses. We've seen how good he's been on iRacing in the series. He's done very, very well there. He should be a driver that's up for consideration. I'd like to see him have more competitive cars. I think he'd do very, very well. He's been one of the more clean guys at the RWR camp. Josh Bickle's also been really, really clean, don't get me wrong. But James Davison should be the first driver up for consideration. The second driver, of course, is Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman, we know, is not going back to Raceway Racing next year, and RWR has talked to Ryan Newman. He's called and talked to Ryan Newman, even though Ryan Newman has kind of denied those rumors. RWR has said himself that he's attempted to call Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman would be a great pickup for the team. I think he'd do exceptionally well with this team, help this team build up, and could be that veteran that come in and get this team up to speed and up and flying. Now, the thing that could affect this is Ryan and Tony don't really have a good relationship and good friendship together. We know that Ryan Newman had some bad comments for Tony Stewart in 2016 after Ryan got let go in 2014. I don't think Tony really wanted to let him go, but that's one thing that could affect Ryan Newman coming back is Tony Stewart's and SHR partnership. The other driver, though, that I think that couldn't have going in this ride is Matt DiBenedetto. We do not know what's going on with Matt DiBenedetto for the 2022 season, but the biggest thing for him is sponsorship and funding. We know that the 38 car could be open next year, and he's been said that he's currently maybe the favorite to go to that ride, but he's going to need funding to go to any ride right now. Now, RWR does have some funding that probably could be available. Nurtec ODT, that's the thing that comes to mind. That ride could be where Matt DiBenedetto goes if he reigns the Cup. Nurtec ODT has had some partnership with Rick Ware, and I don't know if Nurtec knows what has happened to Matt DiBenedetto and his sponsorship ties, but Matty D could go to that ride with the Nurtec sponsorship, and they have, I think, a multi-year deal with that team, so that could be where Matt DiBenedetto goes going into next year, and I know that Matty D did not have really, really the greatest times with the Wood brothers. He didn't do absolutely amazing, but at the same time, I think Matt DiBenedetto could be a really good driver to build around on and help your team get really, really good. And I think he's not an amazing driver, but I think he's a very, very solid driver that's capable enough to help me out. He's got talent, I will say that. It's one thing to know. So who do I think it's going to be? I would first go with the guy, James Davison, who had to be the major guy, but I think it will probably come down to a few. I think those 3 drivers are going to be the main drivers that potentially get into the ride. But I think RWR also downsizing a 2-car operation is a great decision and will help their team. And a major alliance also is going to help their team next year. So I'm overall extremely excited about this, that RWR Racing is focusing right now on only having like a 2-car operation next year. I think it's going to help their team overall as a whole. I think they will do much better. I think it will help them. And I'm really happy to see that they're doing that for next year. And now we're going to jump on to the final major stories of today's episode, as we're going to talk about next-gen test concerts and upcoming next-gen tests and schedule changes. First, let's talk about what NASCAR's direction and really what they want. Denny Hamlin was on Racing Spaces, and I actually was listening to my first ever Racing Spaces on Tuesday night, and Denny Hamlin was on there, and Cassie Frambrero transcripted this and put this on her Twitter. He says on Racing Spaces, if we want pack-type racing, we're still going too fast, and fans are still going to hate that. We got to figure out what we want first and build a package for it. If they want us to have us sliding around and spinning out like we used to, let's do it. Now, NASCAR, there was a report that came out from Bob Pockrass recently, and he said that NASCAR was not very happy, that they were very, very close, but the dirty air was a major, major issue. And they were all going very, very slow on the track with 173 miles an hour being the top with the 550 horsepower package and the 8-inch spoiler. Denny Hamlin is absolutely correct. And Denny Hamlin, I remember them saying this as well back in July. NASCAR, I don't know what direction they really want to go right now, because honestly, I do not think the NASCAR really has a clear and concise direction of where they want to go. And Denny Hamlin was saying this back in July at Atlanta when they announced that they were going to repave. A lot of drivers seem like they're very, very frustrated right now with the situation of NASCAR, currently at the moment. They're not, it doesn't seem like NASCAR really knows what they're doing. Do they want pack type racing? It seems like that's what they kind of want with them repaving Atlanta to be like a mini super speedway race. But it seems like they also want these cars to be really, really hard to drive even on intermediates. So does NASCAR want these cars to be hard to drive at intermediates? Or do you want them to pack type racing? Because if they want them to be sliding down, like Denny Hamlin said, you basically have to get the speeds up a lot more. If you want these cars to basically be tight and close pack racing, you got to lower the speeds. NASCAR, honestly, in my opinion, they need to figure out what direction they really, really want to go. Because that's one thing again, NASCAR does not seem to know a direction. And keep this in mind, we are only about 2 months away from the season technically starting. The season technically starts in about 70 days. It starts on February 6th. And the first mile and a half race in the first race with the intermediate package, which we really even know what it's going to be now because NASCAR seems like they're going to be changing it. The first race is in late February. And we're coming up to December, and we still don't really entirely know. We probably know what the 670 horsepower is going to be on the short tracks and road courses next year, even though it's possible they could also increase that to 750 horsepower going into next year. So we really don't know. But NASCAR, I agree with Denny Hamlin. NASCAR needs to figure out a direction they want to go, because if they don't figure out a direction soon, that's going to be a major, major problem, which leads into the next portion of this episode. We're going to talk about the change of the next-gen testing schedules. As you can see, there are some changes that are happening to the next-gen test schedules that are going to be taking place. There is going to be a one-day 3-car test at Charlotte Oval on December 7th and 8th. Then there will be a 2-day organizational test at Charlotte Oval on week of December 13th and 17th, most likely December 15th and 17th, with day off between to analyze the data. Then there will be a Phoenix test on January 25th and 26th, which is being moved from a little bit early, which is actually supposed to happen on December 14th and 15th. That's being moved from January 25th and the 26th. And there's also supposed to be that Daytona test that's supposed to happen on, I believe, January 11th through the 12th, so 2 days there. And then the next 2 weeks they'll be there. Then there's also, and then we'll talk about what potentially is coming for that now. So interesting, they added more testing. First thing, I will give NASCAR a lot of props. I'm really, really happy that they're adding more testing to try to fix out these problems, because I think that it seems like NASCAR really wasn't happy with what they were seeing. And I think NASCAR realizes, hey, we got to do a much better job. Here's what's possibly coming out. And Bozy Tater-Ravik, and shout out to this guy, because he's a guy that's been really, really good in regards to the next-gen stuff. He's been a guy that's been really good in regards to supporting on it. And here's what he said in regards to this. He said there's possible modifications of the ride height on the cars. Apparently, the ride heights are really, really high on the cars right now, and NASCAR might be going ahead and lowering those ride heights a little bit to try to gain more speed. He also reports that the 4 and 10 were 670 horsepower, and they were 2 miles an hour increase from the 550 horsepower package, which I find really, really interesting. Now, I do think the size of the spoiler really, really did contribute to that, but they were only going 173 horsepower with the 550, and they only increased to 175 horsepower with the 670 horsepower package. And it's possible of testing 750 horsepower tapered spacer, which, yes, I would like to see NASCAR increase the size of the horsepower in the cars, especially intermediate tracks, to make better racing. There's also talk about lowering the spoilers from 8 inches potentially down to 7, and also maybe down to 6 inches of spoiler. Here's what the direction I'd like to see NASCAR go. Because one thing, like I said, I will give NASCAR props. They're doing a really, really good job in regards to trying to fix these issues in the next-gen car. Here's what I'd like to see NASCAR do in the direction I'd like to see NASCAR go to. I'd like to see NASCAR go ahead and reduce the size of the spoilers down to 4. Actually, I'd like to see NASCAR run basically for both packages, 750 horsepower for short tracks, road courses, intermediate tracks, and all the other tracks. Run 750 horsepower and a 4-inch spoiler. Not too small of a spoiler, because I think if you run a too small of a spoiler, I think we really won't see the best racing out there. But I think if you have, even though the bodies are going to be symmetrical, we'll talk more about that here in a second. But so that's what I'd like to see, is them have the spoiler there, 750 horsepower, and a medium-sized spoiler similar to Xfinity. The Xfinity series, I believe, runs, I think, a 650 horsepower, which, again, their racing has been really, really good on intermediate. So if they could get it even to 650, the more horsepower for me, the better it's going to be. I really don't care how the racing is, because I'm still going to watch the sport regardless, but that's what I would like to see. Now, things that I think are beneficial, there's things that are good. First of all, the bodies are symmetrical, which I think that'll help the racing overall too. Going into next year, is the bodies are symmetrical. The issue with the last cars, the Gen 6 cars, they really were not symmetrical. They were basically the body lines were skirted out a little bit, which created on the left side of the car, and they were not even. And then, of course, with the next-gen car, the bodies are symmetrical. Now, teams may be able, as a year or two goes on, they may be able to fix this. But like I just said in the beginning of this point, they got to figure out what they want to do. And it seems like even a few months away from the season, they really do not know what to do. And I think that it's a fair point that COVID really did affect this whole thing. Because this car actually was supposed to come out in this year. They actually were supposed to race in 2021. They were supposed to race it. But that really changed with, of course, the COVID pandemic. NASCAR delayed it a year, and there have been a lot of concerns about it. They did fix some of the issues with the heating and stuff, which is a positive, and the basically steering rack problems, but this is the thing I'm really worried about, is the intermediate side of things. And NASCAR truly, in my opinion, does need to figure out what they want. Because if they can figure out what they want going into next year, I think we'll have a really clear direction. And I'm hoping in these next-gen tests, and they should have parts and pieces ready to go, or spare parts that are still waiting and they're working on right now. They should be ready to go, but that is going to be happening next in a week or so, and it's definitely really interesting that NASCAR is talking about changing up the way that they are going to be doing the next-gen tests, and those are going to be coming up very soon, and we'll have a lot more to discuss in regards to those tests, and if NASCAR is much more happier with the changes they make, but those are the tests that are coming up really soon. So, anyway, that is it for today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on so you be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about the next-gen test concerns and the next-gen test schedule changing? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Ware Racing expecting to be a 2-car operation in the Cup Series in 2022? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.